Now, I've done tons of videos talking about traditional grip and match grip, and I've done videos on the origins of traditional grip, but I get tons of questions and comments around that style. So I wanted to do one video that really does a deep dive into how traditional grip fits into modern drum set playing and if it's something that you should study. So that's what we're going to do in this video. Let's get started. Traditional and match grip. When did this shift take place? When did drummers all of a sudden stop playing this way and start playing this way? Well, I would say that shift happened when the big shift in music went from jazz to rock. Now, the birth of rock and roll happened in the 50s with musicians like Elvis and Chuck Berry. But at that point, their drummers are still playing with traditional grip. There's still a very heavy jazz influence, and the rock beats still had a very prominent swing to them. Now, as you progress closer to the 60s, that's when you start seeing these jazz drummers all of a sudden switching to a match grip. You can watch drummers like Ringo Starr, Keith Moon from The Who. And as we start getting closer to the 70s, we start getting big icons like John Bonham, jazz fusion icons like Billy Cobham. But what you have to realize is that the drummers that these drummers studied from were all playing traditional grip on the drum set. Whoa. If you're a match grip player, go ahead and hit that like button right now. One interesting comment I got, seems like the shift from traditional to matched had more to do with social factors like pop music and the growth of drum set production that grew a crop of players with no exposure to traditional grip, rather than any technical or physical disadvantage. So I wanted to unpack that a little bit. Now, as far as things like hardware and cymbals and drums and things getting better over time, I don't think that had any influence over the grip. I do think that younger drummers were seeing some of their heroes playing match grip, so they just played match grip. So drummers like Ringo, drummers like Bonham, they didn't have anyone to role model off of that were playing match grip. So match grip for them was born out of the need for playing heavier backbeats in bigger arenas, and for traditional jazz players who are playing in traditional grip and doing very delicate tipping or comping patterns, all of a sudden this new crop of drummers are finding themselves having to play these really heavy backbeats, but in traditional grip, that just doesn't come as naturally. It does not lend itself to a very heavy backbeat. But when you switch to a match grip, it's right there, almost instantly. If you prefer traditional grip, go ahead and hit that like button right now. That does not mean that you cannot develop a very heavy backbeat with traditional grip. It absolutely can be developed, it's just not as straight a line. If we look at other drummers, guys like Steve Gadd, guys like Dave Weckl, guys like Fenichel, Todd Zuckerman, drummers in the 80s like Stuart Copeland. Again, very heavy-handed with traditional grip. Even heavier rock drummers like Rick Allen from Def Leppard, before he lost his left arm, he was playing a very heavy and mean backbeat with that traditional grip. So once again, anything that you can play in traditional grip, you can develop in match grip. And anything that you can do in match grip can be developed in traditional grip. So I would argue that even in today's music scene, there's plenty of drummers that are exposed to that traditional grip, especially if you're in the marching world or you're in a world where you have to play this grip for the aesthetic. And there's still plenty of drummers that are playing inside a traditional grip. And if you really take an honest look at the technique, not the style, not the preference, not the feeling, the bare bones technique, traditional grip comes up short in a lot of places. The first point, with traditional grip, you're using less muscles in your weaker hand. Now, most drummers are right-handed. True, there are a lot of left-handed drummers, and I know some left-handed drummers that play right-hand traditional grip, especially if they were marching drummers. You don't have a choice, you can't switch. You have to play this way because you have to match the line. So I'm not talking about that small percentage of drummers that play traditional grip in their strong hand. I'm talking about most drummers that are right-handed and playing the traditional grip in their weak hand. So if I'm doing the most fundamental thing, like single strokes, if we look at the right hand, all of my fingers are making contact with the stick. That means I'm drawing balance and strength from your index fulcrum, your middle finger, your ring finger, and even your pinky. Now, talking about the cradle position, you can go through and cycle through all the fingers as well, but that's coming from more of a dribbling thing, where I'm just pushing down and the rebound is taking the stick back up. Where this way, I'm controlling both the positive and negative. If I do the same thing in traditional grip, notice how all these fingers are off the stick. So now I'm losing all of that balance and all those muscle groups that control those fingers. And generally, I'm driving the stick with my thumb and the radial, the twisting of my wrist. Now again, going back to the right hand. If I'm in a German form, I'm also using the radial. And I'm using the flex that happens here. So I have this motion, I have the radial, I have the flex, I have my fingers. Basically, I'm taking advantage of every single muscle group from my shoulder to my fingertips. So again, we're utilizing more muscle groups. Also, having to switch your form and turn your hand over to essentially match your hand is something that we do in traditional grip, but again, it's weird to have to do that. Now let's talk about range of motion, the actual arc of the stick. So if I'm, again, in a German position and I flex my wrist, I get about that much arc. But now with the radial, I could go all the way up to 90 degrees and I could continue all the way to 180 degrees. So I have this entire range of motion that I can play with. And there's no tension or strain on my muscles because it's coming from a natural position. In traditional grip, I no longer have this flex. This flex is meaningless. The only thing I have is the radial. But the difference is I'm starting with my thumb facing the ceiling. So if I'm starting here and I try to arc the stick, that's all I get. That's as far as I can go. Look at the difference. Here's match grip. Here's the same position. Here's 90 degrees. Here's 180. Traditional grip, if I want to get to 180, now I don't know what you're seeing, but this shit ain't natural. So what do traditional drummers do to overcome that? Well, they do things like letting go of the stick. So doing this. So again, taking all my fingers away and letting the stick arc, that at least gives me to a 90 degree. And once again, there goes all that strength and balance because these fingers aren't even touching the stick. And I'm still locked at maybe 90 degrees. So I remember asking one of my teachers, who's great with traditional grip, how do I overcome that? How do I get the stick to arc the same way? Even if I'm here, even if I'm at 90 degrees where both sticks are facing straight up, there is a huge stretch happening here. All my muscles are in their tensest, tightest positions and weakest positions, just trying to get that stick to face the ceiling. So what did my teacher tell me to do? He told me to stretch. He said what you gotta do is you gotta stretch that radial. Stretch it. Stretch it and hold it. Stretch it, breathe, hold it. Do this every day and stretch. Try to relax your shoulder, relax your elbow, let it come out and stretch. But look what I'm doing. I'm stretching my wrist in an unnatural way. The wrist does not want to go that way. It just doesn't. It's not how your body is built. So once again, I'm trying to accommodate this very unnatural grip just to do something that my right hand does completely naturally, that works with my body. In traditional, I'm pushing down on the stick. On the other hand, I'm pulling up on the stick. So they're kind of working in a contrary motion. I have to resolve the positive and negative of the right hand against the dribbling of the left hand. That makes it a lot harder to be even. So all that being said, what's the easiest way to overcome all of these hurdles with traditional grip? The answer is doing that. Look at that, 90 degrees, no stretching, no tension. All my fingers are able to drive the stick. I get the flex on my wrist. I get the radial muscles. And from a coordination standpoint, both hands are driving the sticks the exact same way. Now obviously this is going to develop your hands a lot faster because we're talking about a direct straight line. We're talking about both hands starting from a place where they match and doing the exact same thing. Now other comments I got were about sensitivity. I'm just so much more sensitive in the left hand when I play traditional. Well, the reason you're more sensitive in the left hand is because you have less control. You're actually doing less with the stick and you're forcing the stick to work more for you versus the right hand, which has a lot more skin physically touching the stick. So the challenge with traditional drummers that don't play match grip is they don't know how to shut off those muscles. That's my issue. It's hard for me to shut down all of this surface area that's touching the stick. I'm so used to letting it go from all the practice in traditional grip. In match grip, I can't get that same sensitivity because I don't have the practice. But understand this very carefully. That does not mean that you can't develop that sensitivity. For example, if all you ever did was play match grip, you will find that same exact sensitivity because you have all that control. It's not a matter of using the muscles, it's a matter of shutting them off. And if you've been playing match grip your whole life, you learn how to shut them off. The same way you can be sensitive with your right hand, you can be sensitive with your left hand. There is no sound you can create in traditional grip that you cannot create in match grip. Now it's true, things are gonna feel different. So when I play jazz, things like tipping, doing this, that particular thing is very natural. The stick just kind of sits like that. It doesn't feel so good in match grip because again, I have to put my wrist in a really awkward position to get what happens naturally in traditional grip. So what it means in match grip, I wouldn't do that. I would just find it in more of a straight position and practice it that way. Now at the end of the day, whichever grip you put the most time into is the grip that's gonna feel most natural to you. Especially if you put all that practice time in that developmental phase where you were really carving out those pathways in your brain. For me, that time was really in college. That was the time that I was really focused on building my hand strength, balance, and technique. Since I was a jazz major and I got made fun of by the upperclassmen for being a rocker who played match grip, I forced myself to switch to traditional and then carved all those pathways, spent all those hours. So for me, stylistically, this feels 10 times better. And no matter what I do or how much I practice in match grip, it just does not feel as good. But what we have to understand is that's a me issue. That's not a grip issue. Any student that comes to me, a student that's never held a pair of sticks, I never put a pair of sticks in their hands like this. The only time I teach traditional grip is if that student comes to me with the express purpose of wanting to learn traditional grip and they have a reason for it. And again, that reason shouldn't be, I just like the way it looks. I think it's cool looking. That's not a good reason. Peer pressure. That's also not a good reason. I have to march in a drum corps and everybody is playing like this, so I have to conform to the line. That's a great reason. And if the reason is, listen, I want to play jazz and I want to honor the tradition of these master jazz drummers. I want to look and sound and play like them. That is a great reason. So I guess what it comes down to is knowing your outcome. Why do you want to use this grip? And as long as you go into it understanding that you're building a handicap in your playing by trying to study this grip, it's fine. You just got to understand that now it's much harder to get better because you're taking on this handicap of using the traditional grip. A handicap that does not exist in match grip. Now again, don't confuse that with me suggesting that this is bad or this is wrong, because there are a lot of stylistic nuances that are very clear. All of my heroes, guys like Fenichel, guys like Dave Weckl, guys like Steve Smith, they play in traditional grip, and I absolutely love their playing. Now I know this is a long video, so I hope that clears it up. And remember, whatever grip you decide to practice with, make sure you practice with purpose. Thank you so much for watching that entire drum lesson. If you want more drum lessons just like this, check out this video. And if you want to study the drums and go deeper into your playing, I challenge you to take my Drum Foundation Challenge and join my Study the Drums app community. You could do that by clicking this link right here. This is a free resource that I provide for drummers, and the results might surprise you. So go take a look at that challenge, and I'll see you over there.